The secret to life is to not take life so seriously. When we're living from the mind or from the ego, we have a tendency to live super seriously, and we're so fixated and focused on all these little things that don't really matter, and we're trying to control every little aspect of our lives. And this ends up limiting us. It prevents us from experiencing the life and the life more abundantly that Jesus talks about. And so if we want to experience life to the fullest and enjoy life and be present and all these great things, we have to do what Jesus says. And what does he say? He says, hey, unless you become like a child, you will never enter into the kingdom of heaven. And when he says the kingdom of heaven, he's not talking about this far off place in the afterlife where people go when they die. No, he's actually talking about a very present reality right here, right now, that we can enter into and experience that abundant life that he talks about. And so the way to experience this is to not do what the mind and the ego are urging us to do, which is to become a somebody and to get so attached and fixated on this persona, on this mask that we wear, to prove to everyone that, oh, look, this is who we are, and I've done this, and I've done that. And we become so identified and attached to what we are doing, and it becomes all about status. And that's why a lot of times adults lose that sense of being playful and laughing and living from this place of being free and not taking life so seriously. And it's like that movie, what is it? That movie Hook. I think it came out in the 90s with Robin Williams, where he's Peter Pan or whatever, but the movie starts off with him as an adult and he's super serious and he forgot who he really was. He forgot that he was Peter Pan. And then what happens is he's living in the world, and like I said, everything, he's all stressed out about work stuff and being an adult and just the responsibilities of life and all this kind of stuff. But then what happens is he goes back to Neverland. They bring him back, but he's like freaking out because he doesn't remember any of it and he doesn't know what's going on. But when he gets back there, eventually, I think one of the first scenes is when he's back to Neverland, all the lost boys, all the kids that are around him that used to be like his friends, they're trying to get him to wake up to him being Peter Pan, which is like this inner child. And he can't do it at first because he's so programmed. He's so in the matrix. He's so conditioned to be a certain way. He's got this strong egoic construct of who he thought he was. But then eventually he has this awakening, we could say, and he remembers and he goes back to this original innocence of being Peter Pan, being a child. And all of a sudden, his world changes and he starts to live fully. And he starts to experience laughter. You know, he's telling all these jokes and they're playing all these games. And life is just beautiful. It's colorful. It's vibrant. It's radiant. And this is it. This is the sequence. This is the pattern. It's returning home back to this original innocence where we're just living in the now. If you look at a child, they're going with the flow. They're not worried about the past or the future. That's why they don't have all the guilt and anxiety that we tend to have as adults, because they're just fully present. And there's just this natural way of life that is full of playfulness and joy and gratitude. And, you know, when we start to shift into that consciousness, we could say, of being childlike, and we're living lighter, we're living from this place of being free, and we're positive, then there's actually a change in our physical bodies. We start to experience better health, better clarity. Every aspect of our lives starts to shift when we start to wake up to who we really are, and we realize that our true self is innocent and it's much more childlike than adult-like. Now, here's the thing. When I say life is not about being serious, what I'm not saying is that nothing matters or we should just do whatever. No, that's not what I'm saying. because this is the key. This is what Alan Watts said. He said, it's not about being serious, it's about being sincere. So you can be sincere without being super serious. And so think about it like this. Think about, you're playing a sport, you're playing a game with someone. No one wants to play with the kid, with the person who's super serious all the time, right? No one wants to be on that person's team. But on the other hand, no one wants to be on the person's team that is just like, this is meaningless, I don't care, it's whatever. And so those are both sides of it. So there's this happy medium of again, it's not about being super serious, but it's also not about this mentality of nothing matters and I don't care. But there's this place in the middle, this healthy balance of being sincere, where you're fully playing the game. It is absolutely meaningful. You understand the purpose behind it, and you're going and you're living at the highest level, but at the same time, you're not holding on to it. There's not an attachment. And so if it doesn't go the way you want it to go, you're not devastated. You're not crushed. You're not attached. So that's what this is. It's living from this place of being sincere, but not attached, not serious. This is the key. This is the balance. This is what it means to live from this place of being childlike. And this is when we experience the kingdom of heaven right here, right now. Now, what I will say is that in my own life, there has been certain things that I've recognized that have caused me to really miss out on the beauty of life because I tend to take life too seriously. And when I'm remembering and trying to process my childhood, I can go back, I can remember me being a child, living from that place of original innocence where I'm full of love and laughter and playfulness, and I'm living in the now. I'm living from this place of gratitude and going with the flow, all these great things. I can remember that. I have memories of that, and I can go within myself and experience my inner child. It's still within me. It's still right there. However, when I go back and I look at kind of what happened in my own life, what I can see is that there was a time where that original innocence, that playfulness, started to drift away. And for me, it all happened when I started to become indoctrinated with all this religious stuff. And a lot of it had to do, one of the first things I remember being told and really programmed with, because it is a matrix that we're either born into or persuaded into, was the idea that there is a God that is up in heaven somewhere who is watching me all of the time. So everything I do and say is being recorded, or this God who's like this monarch on a throne somewhere up in the sky is watching me, and he is always judging me. And so I better be on my best behavior, and I better not sin. So I was, again, told that at a young age. I don't remember exactly when I started to really believe in that, but not long after that, it became embedded in my subconscious. And so I start living my life, and I'm super aware all the time of this God, this deity who is always judging me. And so what this started to create in my own life was a tremendous amount of anxiety and also guilt, because I was thinking about, oh my goodness, I have to be my best behavior. God's always watching me. And if I don't repent immediately after I commit a quote unquote sin, then this God is going to judge me. And then this is what the mind does. Whenever you get into this matrix, the mind takes it to an extreme. And so you start thinking about things like, well, wait a second. If I commit a sin and God sees it, because God sees everything, because he's the judge up there on the throne. If I commit this sin and I don't confess, or I don't repent quick enough, or I don't prove to God that I'm really sorry for doing whatever I did or saying whatever I said, then what happens if I die? What happens if I get in a car wreck? will I go to hell? How will that work? And so I used to experience different thoughts like that, which would cause me to live in fear and anxiety all the time. And then I would have tremendous amounts of guilt and shame about everything I've done, and thinking about, how is God going to judge me for this? Or what if there were certain sins, or what if there were certain things I did that God didn't approve of, that I forgot to ask for forgiveness for? And this is when I started to lose my original innocence, my playfulness, my living from this place of being free and enjoying life and laughing and not taking life so seriously. This is when it all happened, because all of a sudden I'm afraid, and I don't know what this judge is thinking about me, and I'm super focused, and I'm trying to control every little aspect of my life to perform well, to make sure that I'm on my best behavior. And when I was growing up, and I went to Christian schools my entire life, I would get awards. I got this multiple times for being the most, I forget the name of it. It was like the most religious boy. There was one for the boys and one for the girls in each grade. So there was like the most religious boy award, or the most Christian boy award. I got that multiple times because I was living from this place of always wanting to be in my best behavior, and always wanting to, prove to God that I was holy and righteous, because God was the judge, right? And so, but with this came, it was like the life was sucked out of me. I was super serious all the time. I wasn't laughing anymore, or, I wasn't telling jokes, or if there was anything I was saying or doing that I felt like was out of line, I had to immediately like bring myself back in. And again, this went on for many years, and this was when everything started to shift for me, and I lost that sense of being a child. And then what happened was, as I got older, this became a foundation of who I thought I was. So this was really starting to build my ego structure as someone who was very devoted to God, someone that was a true follower of Jesus. And so this seriousness just grew and grew and grew. And then I started thinking about this whole idea of hell. And, growing up as a kid, I knew about the things that they were saying about the afterlife, like heaven and hell, and what's typically taught in the mainstream church, but I didn't really think about it a lot. But then when I got to high school, and then really right after high school, when I was doing a lot of evangelism and street ministry, I started to really contemplate this whole notion of hell a lot, because for me it was like, when I started thinking about this, it was like, there's no way in the world I could ever laugh again, or like enjoy myself, or be happy, or enjoy life, because how can I, if I'm out in public, if I'm going to a restaurant, if I'm in the store, and like there's people all around me who don't know Jesus, who aren't saved, who haven't accepted Jesus Christ into their hearts, they're going to hell forever and ever and ever. And how can I live with myself? How can I not be serious? You see, so what this whole programming had done to me was, it was completely preventing me from the very secret of life, which is to not be serious. I couldn't be serious. How could I be? How could I go to a restaurant and enjoy a nice meal, knowing that my waiter or waitress, or the people sitting behind me or in front of me, could be going to hell forever and ever? And the belief I had about hell at the time was that it was this place of eternal conscious torment for sinners, for unbelievers. And so, of course, I was also dealing with like the guilt and the stress of evangelizing and trying to save as many people as possible, because I thought that was my duty, that was my obligation. And even, again, that in and of itself comes with a tremendous amount of anxiety and stress. But yeah, I realized, I'm like, wait a second, how can someone actually live freely, how can someone actually enjoy life, this life, when they believe in hell, when they believe that the majority of the population, billions and billions of people, are going to hell forever when they die? I don't see how it's possible. And so thankfully, and I've told this story many times in other videos, I eventually walked away from all those different doctrines and dogmas and the fundamentalism, and I was free of all that. But here's what happened. Even when I moved past all these different beliefs and these ideas, like that there's a God who is judging up in the sky, which it doesn't work that way. There's not a God who is judging us. There's also not some kind of like final judgment day where God on his throne is going to judge every living soul. I definitely don't believe in that. But what happened was, when I moved away from those beliefs, like God being a judge and the whole notion of hell, because it was so ingrained in my subconscious, what my mind started doing, and this was also like a moment of realization, but what my mind started doing was, my mind started to replace the belief in a God who is a judge and that this God is judging me all the time. My mind replaced that with myself. And so I became the judge that I was projecting onto this external deity. And then I realized that, okay, the version of God that I was believing in for so many years was actually just my ego, like on steroids, enhanced and projected. That's why Thomas Merton says, Thomas Merton was a Trappist monk. He said, our ideas about God tell us more about ourselves than about God, which is so true. And so I realized that. That was a moment of awakening and realization, like I said. But all of a sudden there was a shift. Like I said, I wasn't totally free from dealing with the judge. The judge went from being this external deity to myself. And so I became super critical of myself, and I got into performance mode, and a lot of it had to do with like OCD and perfectionism, and this created a tremendous amount of anxiety. And so even after moving past these religious doctrines, I still wasn't free. I still wasn't living life at the fullest from this place of being like a child and living sincerely but not seriously, because the judge had become myself. And so this was like the last barrier I had to overcome. And what I noticed was, for me, living from this place, it was all ego, right? It was this sense of being a separate self. But for me, it had everything to do with thinking I had to be a certain way. I had to be perfect in order to be valuable and worthy in the eyes of others. And so I was trying to gain acceptance, and I was trying to gain the approval and the love from other people by continuing this path of being super serious and having the persona and trying to portray myself to be someone and everything that comes with that, right? But what I eventually learned, and I think honestly, we've got the secret of life being not being serious, but the way to not be so serious ultimately amounts to you not taking yourself so seriously. So even if you move past, okay, you're not being judged, like you can move past that, you can understand that that is fictional, that is something that is made up, that is something that is used as a control mechanism by religion, but it's not reality. So we move past that, but then there's still the ego we're dealing with. There's still this inner judge, this inner critic that we're having to live with. And this is the very thing that's preventing us from truly living life and enjoying life. And so what do we do with this? Well, again, my mindset was, if I could just earn or attain the acceptance, the approval, the validation from other people, then I would be free. And I tried doing that, and it never worked, because it was like the standard of perfection that I was creating, that I was thinking that other people were expecting from me, was completely illusory. It was something that my own mind was making up. The reality of it was, and I didn't know this at first, but the reality of it was that what I really, really wanted, what I really needed, was not the acceptance and validation of other people. It was the acceptance and validation from my own self. It was self-acceptance. It was loving my own self. And when I started to do this, when I started to fully accept myself, forgive myself, love myself, then all of a sudden, I return back to the garden, we could say, back to that original innocence of being a kid. Because when I was free of me, free of the ego, all of a sudden I was free of everyone else. I didn't care what people thought about me. I didn't care about their opinions. And because, again, I was thinking that that's what I was looking for and that's what I was wanting. But in reality, what I really needed, the self-acceptance that I was looking for out there, was always within me. And the moment I was able to do that, the moment I was able to accept myself, let it all go, let go of all the different opinions and thoughts and the limiting, disempowering things that I was told about myself growing up, when I could just let all that go, forgive myself, love myself, accept myself, that was it. That was the moment where I could stop taking myself so seriously. I could stop taking life so seriously. And I started to live free again. I started to live from this place of flow and playfulness. And I started laughing and making jokes and smiling more and laughing at myself. I mean, if you look at kids, what are they doing? They're laughing at themselves. They don't care. They're free. And that is what true life, true living is all about. Can you laugh at yourself? Can you joke about yourself? Can you realize that there's this ultimate joke of really, or we could say there's this game of life. And like I made that analogy about playing sports or games earlier, that's what it amounts to. Like, how are you playing in this life? Are you taking it super seriously? Or are you someone who just doesn't care and life is meaningless and whatever? Or are you able to dance and balance that happy medium of being sincere but not serious? You're not attached. You're living from this place of detachment. You're letting go, you're going with the flow, and you're living from this place of being childlike, original innocence. That's where true joy really is. And it's not about gaining anyone's approval anymore, because you've approved yourself. You realize there is no judge in the sky who's judging you. The only judge is yourself. And the anxiety fades away. And I think of this quote from Alan Watts where he says something like, "No amount of anxiety makes any difference to anything that is going to happen." So you lose this need to control your life, because life goes from being some kind of like test that determines where you spend eternity into a dance, into a flow. And it's all rooted in the eternal now, in the present moment. So I think that's it for today. If you found this video helpful, informative, or insightful, please leave a thumbs up at the bottom of the screen, and be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. And again, don't take yourself so seriously. Love, laugh, have fun, enjoy life, be here now. And remember that unless you become like a child, you'll never experience the kingdom of heaven right here, right now. All right, that's it. See you next time.